Hello there, internet dwellers, and welcome to Random News of Gaming for December 2022. I got a new microphone, can you tell? Probably not, because nobody watches these videos, just saying. But I will be making good use of it in the future, including my upcoming Top Games of 2022 video, which will be objectively better than the subject of our first story. The Game Awards, which will be happening in a few days from now. And the nominees this year show that 2022 wasn't exactly a great year in terms of gaming. But once again, it also shows that the inner circle of critics that select the nominees don't really have their finger on the pulse of the gaming community, in my opinion. I mean, they didn't even nominate Vampire Survivors for Game of the Year. What the hell, Sony Game Awards? So I don't really care who wins. I only care which one will generate the most amount of salt, because it will be funny. Just saying. Next, we have Yuji Naka, the creator of Sonic and also Knights, arrested for insider trading at Square Enix. Basically, he and two other Square Enix employees bought a bunch of shares of a new game company that was about to announce a new Dragon Quest mobile game. So they got arrested for it, and there hasn't really been any updates since then. Guess we'll see how this plays out, but he really should have been arrested for not making a new Knights game, and also for making Balan Wonderworld.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
Next, we have a bit of a doozy that I assume not a lot of people are going to care about, but at some point in the future we're going to be getting a new Fable game, allegedly. And in an interview, the head of Xbox Studios, Matt Booty, said that the developers of the next Fable game are making it for today's sensibilities, which sounds like a marketing code word that doesn't really mean anything to us, but whenever I hear them say something like this, it's always a major red flag. And it's hard to get into this topic without getting into this stupid political culture war bullshit, so I'll try not to do that. But basically what this means is the game is going to be toned down, they're not going to be taking any risks, and they're not going to be doing anything interesting, in my opinion. And I think this is a huge problem for a series like Fable, which in the past was notorious for being weird and kinda edgy and didn't really give a shit about the current cultural limitations or whatever. I like to think of it as the Grand Theft Auto of the fantasy genre in video games, because the game basically lets you do whatever you want, or at least that seemed to be the goal that was never actually realized in the final products. Anyway, I hope Matt Booty's comment doesn't mean what I think it means, but it's also one of those things that can be interpreted in a ton of different ways, so it could be nothing. But it does have me worried now, and my expectations for this game have dropped to rock bottom because of it. But we'll have to wait and see. And speaking of modern audiences, let's laugh at Blizzard again, as recently they had to remove some of their games from China. You know, the country that they've been abandoning their current audience for? Well, you get what you deserve. Though allegedly this is only happening due to licensing issues, but it's still fun to see karma at work sometimes. Next, we have Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and how much of a hilarious, glitchy mess it's been. I mean, just look at some of the shit that people have shared online about this. It's absolutely hilarious. And despite all these issues, Pokemon fans will never learn, because these games have become the fastest selling Switch games of all time, selling over 10 million copies in the first 3 days. So, don't expect this series to ever get better. Pokemon is Nintendo's Call of Duty after all, and they're going to keep releasing games as fast as they possibly can just to make more and more money, because you'll keep giving it to them. Lastly, we're going to go over some Elder Scrolls community news. There's a mod project for Morrowind that's been in the works for about 20 years now, called Tamriel Rebuilt, that aims to recreate the land surrounding the island of Vardenfell that Morrowind is set in, which eventually will triple or quadruple the size of the original game. So if you ever enjoyed Morrowind in the past, it's worth going back to it just for this mod alone, even in its current unfinished state. They recently released a new version of the mod called Dominions of Dust, which brings the project to what looks like around 40% completion. So go check that out if you want, and if you decide to play it, you can always put on PatricianTV's 20-hour Skyrim Retrospective on in the background. Just saying. That's about all the news I got this month, so let's get into some releases. December is very front heavy with not a lot coming out in the later half. But first, let's cover a few games that I missed again. Settlement Survival, an aptly named survival city builder game that came out of early access in October. Yeah, I missed it all the way back then, so here it is now. The Night Witch, a cute looking Metroidvania that came out on November 29th. And another Metroidvania called Astronite, a 1-bit Metroidvania that's literally just black and white, yet still looks like it was very well graphically designed. Next we have Dwarven Skykeep, a game where you build keeps for your dwarves in very interesting and silly locations. Also on December 1st, we have Moonshine Inc, which honestly I only included because I find the concept of a Florida Man simulator pretty hilarious. Next we have the Callisto Protocol, you know, the game that said fuck you to censors last month. Unfortunately, it sounds like the game hasn't turned out so well, but apparently you might have better luck if you get this one on PlayStation. Next we have Hello Neighbor 2, a follow-up to a cult classic indie game that was fairly popular with kids if I remember correctly. On the same day, we finally have a release for Dwarf Fortress, an extremely deep simulation game that's been kind of an experiment for a long time but never had a full release until now. Next we have Chained Echoes, which finally got a release date for December 7th, a JRPG in the vein of classic Super Nintendo ones, but looks a bit more advanced than that. Lastly, we have Samurai Maiden on December 8th, a historical Japanese-inspired Musou game featuring an isekai schoolgirl protagonist with Yuri elements. Because why not? And that's everything for this month. If you have any news stories you want me to cover in a future video, you can always leave it in the comments. And if you want to see more videos, don't forget to slap that subscribe button, preferably with your penis. You too, ladies. And remember, have high standards, low expectations.